Was Josh Hoover's safe start to the season nothing more than a bit of fool's gold? Well, after his game versus Arizona State, I think it's at least worth the inquiry. Oh, yeah, it's locked on Horned Frogs. Play my music.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Horned Frogs podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything TCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We'll wrap up today's episode by looking at why the offensive line is the Achilles heel for TCU's offense. And no, this is not solely based off of the Arizona State game. Speaking of not just basing things off of the most recent performance, TCU has a very concerning trend that if they don't get under wraps, there's going to be more losses on their schedule than many fans would be okay with. But we are going to now focus on this Arizona State game because I know the term Overreaction Monday exists, and that's the reason I didn't talk about this on Monday. That's the reason that I came in and waited until Tuesday, and I don't think it's worth calling an overreaction. I think it's worth an inquiry, though. Is Josh Hoover's safe start to the 2025 season just fool's gold? And I want to be sure that we are emphasizing the word safe. It's easy to lose in there, but I'm not talking about whether or not Josh Hoover is a talented player. I do think Josh Hoover is talented. I've watched them play. I don't think that should be in question. And I know he had a really rough start, or excuse me, a really rough ending to that Arizona State game, but it was both ways, right? Like yesterday, we spoke about it in a glowing fashion. I didn't do any overreaction Monday. I came in and I gave you what was next. I gave you what was necessary for the team. When we went into our PFF grades, we talked about the offense, and Josh Hoover was the number one ranked player on TCU's offense that day, despite having a Jekyll and Hyde back and forth tale of two halves. Instead of going in there and talking about the back half of his game, we talked about the beginning. We talked about what went well. We talked about the 7 big time throws that PFF graded him with. And now on Tuesday, we're going to have an inquiry about the entirety of his season. Because if I put a coin on the table right now, you look down and you see that it's heads, I don't have to flip it over for you to know what's on the other side. But now we've looked at the positive, we looked at the good. Let's look at the tail end of Josh Hoover's performance versus Arizona State, because that's where things get a little bit tricky. And that's where the question of, was the safe start to his season just fool's gold? Because that's when he got a little bit loose with the football. And I think many people would reflect back to 2024, where he was having some difficulties protecting the ball. Now, we're going to look at this because I think it's worth the conversation. I'll answer it now. I don't think that Josh Hoover's season or start to the season was fool's gold yet, but he'll have to prove that moving forward, because there are some things that he showed that are very concerning. Now, one could argue, and I think this would be a safe argument, one could argue, well, aren't all quarterbacks, when put under duress, going to have some more questionable decisions? 100%. But there's a big difference between a quarterback who has a history with turnovers, making questionable decisions, and one who doesn't. It's the same reason that if Jameis Winston throws an interception, people are quick to bring up 30 for 30. Meanwhile, a quarterback who is looked at as having a more safe style of play, they throw an interception, that's not being talked about. Jameis Winston could throw an interception down 15 with 30 seconds left trying to make a play, and people will criticize you, oh, that's that Jameis Winston experience. No, it's the thing that pretty much 95% of quarterbacks would do in that situation. Am I trying to say that Josh Hoover is Jameis Winston? No. But what I am trying to say is that Josh Hoover had 11 interceptions last year. I don't know where that ranks in the country, because it was like 1,000,005 players with 12 interceptions. But the top guy had 14, and 11 isn't that far from there. So you're looking at him as being one of the players with the most interceptions in the league, or in the nation, excuse me, not in the league or the conference, in the nation. He was high in that. He lost a decent amount of fumbles. You're looking at a player who honestly had turnover concerns in 2024. And I felt like he had that under wraps in 2025. But then he gets a little bit of pressure, and sometimes you just revert to your default settings. And I hate to do the comparison, but I think that is relevant. Sam Levitt, when he gets pressure, I think he defaults to his kind of factory settings of I'm going to take off and run. That's what I think he does. So sometimes pressure just makes you kind of revert back to who you've always been. And that could be a guy who, when put under duress, makes questionable decisions. He didn't have to worry about that against North Carolina. He didn't have to worry about that against Abilene Christian. He did have to worry about that a little bit with SMU. And I thought it struggled, but I don't think that it was no turnovers. I didn't think it was a lot of turnover-worthy plays. Against Arizona State, though, this was another level of pressure. And it felt like he didn't have the poise that I thought he always had this season. And that was the thing I said in my post-game press conference. Or not, I'm not Sonny Dykes, but in my post-game podcast. The poise for Josh Hoover just wasn't there. You can point to the fumble. And if you want to say, well, that should have been better protection. Yes, but I think I'd also like to see Josh Hoover protect that ball. You don't have to only blame one person. I think that there's blame to go around. You would have liked to protect, but that wasn't even his blind side, and it seemed like he was completely unaware. I thought he had an interception at the end. I thought he had multiple plays that could have been picked off. I don't think that this was a safe game for Josh Hoover. Now, this could be a one-off. It could. When I ask if this fool's gold and I say that we don't know the answer yet, we may know over the next 3 to 5 weeks because he's going to be put in a situation where he's pressured again. End of the episode, we're going to talk about how the offensive line is the Achilles heel. That's going to impact Josh Hoover. But if Josh Hoover is the guy that a lot of people think he is, you have to protect the football. You have to manage some things. We've seen him run out of the pocket against SMU. Can I get more of that a little bit more frequently? Is that something that's going to be common, or is that something you just did? SMU gets diced up all the time, right? Like I feel like SMU got diced up by Baylor and maybe one other school, but it could just be Baylor and TCU. But when you have a performance like he did at the end of Friday night, you start questioning everything else you saw. We know North Carolina ain't that good of a team. We've seen them get whooped up on by UCF. Like, we've seen this. SMU, there's question marks. Arizona State, I think they were actually pretty underrated going into the game. I do think that they were a top 25-esque team, so them moving back in didn't surprise me. But Josh Hoover, when you get pressure, are you going to turn the ball over? Because if you're going to be a great quarterback, if you're going to be a really good quarterback, if you're going to be a playoff caliber quarterback, that can't be what you do. So when I ask if it's fool's gold, I don't question. Fool's gold to me means, is Josh Hoover this talented, poised quarterback where when things go wrong around him, he's able to make it right? Or is Josh Hoover a guy who is a talented passer, but maybe is going to give the ball up to the defense occasionally? It's so funny. When I talked about the SMU game, I painted Kevin Jennings with that brush. And it happened, so I don't feel inaccurate for it. But I painted Kevin Jennings with that brush. Seems like Josh Hoover may be the next painting. Next 3 to 5 games will tell. Pressure will come. You will have to protect the football. He has more interceptions than he should on the year, if we're going to be honest. So I'm not trying to hold that against him, but he's at 4 right now. He had 11 last year. Just something to monitor. Just something to monitor. And we're going to talk about some of those interceptions because that's one of the most concerning trends, but we're not pointing the finger at Josh Hoover. I actually don't think that most of them are his fault, once again. But what we will do is point to how these turnovers, specifically turnovers in the red zone, have been costly for TCU as we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Quo. You may know them as Open Phone, but names do change. The quality service is still the same. One of the tools that helps make a huge difference for business owners is Quo. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before. They just have a new name. No longer Open Phone. Now they are Quo. And here's why it matters. Because every missed call is money left on the table. Now, you tell me, you pick up your phone, you need a plumber, you need whatever. You call the plumber doesn't answer. Do you wait 30 minutes and call back? You need an electrician, they don't answer. Do you wait an hour and call back? Not if you don't have a personal relationship. And Quo doesn't want you in that position where you're missing calls. Quo is going to help you out because their built-in AI agent is a game changer. And it answers after-hour calls and capture leads and keeps the business moving even when you're off the clock. So see why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo. Get started today and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's quo.com/lockedoncollege. And if you got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day. Every day for your second listen, make sure you're checking out the Big 12 Squad Show, right? We go up twice a week, once on Sunday mornings, and then once I think on Wednesday, I believe it is. But also check out the Locked on Big 12 show, not just the Squad Show, but the Locked on Big 12 show with Drake Toll. I'm about to tell you, the most revolutionary thing you've ever heard in reference to the game of football. You have to score points. Points matter. And I know, you never would have thought about it. In a game that you're meant to have more points than your opponent, you would have never thought that points matter. The problem here is that when TCU gets into the red zone, every single week that they played an FBS team, they've turned over the ball in the red zone one time. That's not winning football. That's not something you can get away with consistently. And it's not something that they got away with this Friday. TCU lost to Arizona State by 3 points. And yes, I know things change over the course of a game, but they lost by 3 points. And they took 3 points off the board themselves with a drop pass by Jordan Dwyer that turned into an interception. I understand it was good coverage. It was not good enough coverage to where you batted the ball up. That ball should have been either caught or it should have hit the ground. That was not supposed to be a turnover. But unfortunately for the Horned Frogs, it continues a concerning trend that has plagued them all throughout FBS play. When they played Abilene Christian, they went 6 for 6. They scored touchdowns every single time, and they looked like a juggernaut. Once you got them moving, you couldn't stop them. But when you played North Carolina, when you played SMU, when you played Arizona State, the same thing happened. You get into the red zone, sometimes deeper in the red zone than others, but you turn over the ball, and it's been an interception every single time. I know we just talked about Josh Hoover, and we talked about how his safe start to the season is a fool's gold. I don't think that any of those interceptions in the red zone are his fault, except for maybe the first one against North Carolina. That's the one where you can put at least a little bit of the blame on him. I think it was still an unfortunate situation, but the domino starts with him. I saw some people trying to draw the correlation between turnovers and turnover on downs. These are not the same. Turnover on downs, you can be a victim of your own aggressiveness. Turnovers, especially in these cases, have just been mistakes. And then mistakes are not the same thing as an opponent's aggressiveness. Please, let's not correlate the two. Both have turnover in the term, but no, they're not the same. With TCU, every single week that they played an FBS team, you have seen them shoot themselves in the foot. I don't care if it was North Carolina, SMU, Arizona State. They have done it repeatedly, and we've been able to kind of brush it to the side because they've been winning football games while still doing it. When you win football games and you have these mistakes, it's like, oh, okay, well, you still won, and winning cures everything. It covers up everything. It's the best makeup that they've ever put on the market. But when you play Arizona State and you have this issue and you don't win the game, oh, now it's time to talk about it. And it's reached 3 FBS matchups in a row. And I don't think that these have been phenomenal plays on the defense every time. I honestly think that Lemony Snicket couldn't have written a better series of unfortunate events than you would see when going through all of the red zone turnovers that TCU has had. But I don't care if it's unfortunate. I don't care if it was great defensive plays. I don't care if it was an errant throw. At this point, it's a trend. And at this point, it's the most concerning trend that I've seen on TCU watching them in 2025. Against North Carolina, you're up 10-7. You're up 10-7 against North Carolina. You throw a sky high, and I get it, you're trying to float the ball over, but you throw a high screen pass, and the wide receiver jumps up to get it. He can barely get a hand on it, but he does get a hand on it. And those are the worst. Overthrows and tip balls. You tip this one. First off, it was an overthrow, and you tip it. It goes up in the air. North Carolina scores. North Carolina catches it, goes down with the interception. Cool. North Carolina's, they're not good, okay? So they're not good. We've seen what happened against Central Florida. This is not a good ball club. So you're able to get over it, get past it. That's fine. And it was just kind of unlucky against SMU. Now you're up 14-10. Yeah, you're up 14-10, and you have a chance to go into halftime up 11. This is your chance to really step on SMU, really squash the Mustangs. This is your opportunity because you get the ball coming out of halftime. So you may be able to take this 4-point lead, turn into a 17 or 11-point lead. You know what? Actually, we're going to say 11 because in this situation, Eric McAllister has the ball right in his hands in the end zone. He's coming down, and the defender just takes it. And I just thought it was bad hands on that. Like I'll credit the defender because you did take the ball away. But in general, Hoover put it right where it needed to be, and it just felt like McAllister didn't snatch it. That's what it felt like to me. I don't mean to be disrespectful or, sometimes I hate when fans just act like they did everything wrong and the opponent did nothing right. Sometimes the opponent does something right. I think the DB did a little right, but overall, this was more bad play on McAllister. Very unfortunate. It's a play that you don't feel like you're going to see him make often. Anyway, you're supposed to be up 21-10. Coming out of halftime, maybe going up 28-10. Now you're up 18 points at the beginning of the third quarter. That's a huge swing. You look at this Arizona State game. You're coming out of halftime. You're up 14-10 again. You're up 14-10, first drive. And Arizona State has been phenomenal in the middle eight. Actually, I think this drive may have extended beyond the middle eight. No, it didn't. It was a 2-minute and 19-second drive. So you're right in that middle eight time frame. The fans had started getting into the stadium because it was raining heavily. So you're seeing an empty stadium at the beginning. They were trying to get a little momentum. No, you're not up 14-0. You're up 17-10. Excuse me. Not 14-10. You're up 17-14. Excuse me. I think I was thinking about the SMU game. You're up 17-14 in this game. The fans are coming in. Arizona State is battling back. This is your opportunity to push all of the momentum they had in the first half. At the end in that second quarter, say, whoa, let's stop. Arrete. You keep points away from yourself. Arizona State ends up responding with a field goal after that, and it's a tie ball game. Yes, you battle back with a touchdown, but in a game like this, you can't take points off the board. You throw a slant pass to Jordan Dwyer. It hits him. Looked like it hit him in the chest, in my opinion. I didn't see a defensive back's hand getting in there. Bounces it up, picked off. Super unfortunate bounces. Like, these are just tough breaks. So it's not huge mistakes. It's not things that you think are repeatable. Like, the sky-high screen pass is the most repeatable play in there. Like, it just is. But the Dwyer drop to interception, that's not happening a lot. The McAllister getting the ball taken away from him, that's not happening a lot. But I don't care if it happens a lot. I don't care if it's a one-off. If TCU continues to turn the ball over in the red zone and take points away from themselves, they're going to face good opponents the same way they faced Arizona State, and they're going to lose the game because they're going to be close matchups. You can't always come back. SMU let everybody carve them up. Yeah, you can keep putting points on the Mustangs. North Carolina ain't worth or whatever. You can keep putting points up on them. Arizona State, nah, they got their defense together, and they allowed you to score one more time after that. One more time you scored. Other than that, let's see. After your interception, you went punt, fumble, interception. You have 4 drives the rest of the game. You had a 3-play drive. You had a 6-play drive. They got -1 yards. You had a 2-play drive that ended in a fumble and a 2-play drive that ended in an interception. That is 2, 4, 10, 13. Oh, sorry. You had a touchdown drive. That was 8 points. 8 plays. You had 21 points, 21 plays, the rest of the game. 21 plays the rest of the game. The opportunities were not always there. They just weren't, and you gave up a key one. And speaking of something that was key, the offensive line is going to be the Achilles heel of this team. Let's take a look at why I call them that as we continue and close out today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the only place to make all of your sports watches even more exciting. Thursday Night Football has a good one. It's a really good one between San Francisco and Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Rams. I think that this is going to be a fantastic game. We'll see what happens with Brock Purdy, Mac Jones. We'll see. But the NFC West has been one of the best divisions in football in 2025. I think they're going to be very fun to watch. But not only that, there's going to be some good things to put some money on. Brock Purdy passing yards, Christian McCaffrey running yards. It seems like everybody else is getting hurt over there in San Francisco. So McCaffrey's going to have to tote the rock. Sam Darnold, not Sam Darnold, that's Seattle. Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams, Devontae Adams, not Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. I'm getting everybody mixed up, but it's all these people are in the NFC West, for the record. I know I just said Cooper Kupp and he was a Ram. Now he's a Seahawk. They're all in the NFC West. This is a great division, fun division, and a little bit of a lucrative division if you know what you're doing. So go ahead and go to FanDuel. And if you're new, you get $300 back in bonus bets when you put down your first $5 bet. Go to FanDuel.com to make every moment more. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked on Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to make this quick. I think that the Achilles heel for TCU's offense has been their offensive line, and we could say that is based off of the Arizona State game. No, I just think it was the most apparent, but it's been apparent throughout the year. Especially when you start looking at the PFF grades, the eye test tells you the last 2 weeks they have not been up to par. And when the offensive line hasn't been up to par, the offense has not moved. They just haven't. There's been some issues early, or there were some issues early in that TCU versus SMU game where I thought that Josh Hoover was able to get through it with his legs. But even then, it wasn't crazy. It got worse around the 3rd to 4th quarter, and that's when the offense kind of got stagnant. Then once they started protecting again, things got better. That's also a thing for Josh Hoover. I don't know. Man, I don't know. I think that I would like to see him elevate to the point where those type of things, he can overcome them more consistently. But Arizona State, pressure. And these are really good defensive lines. Like, we'll see. Maybe they'll face more moderate defensive lines, more moderate pass rush attacks, more moderate run defenses, and they'll play better. Like, TCU did have really big challenges these last 2 weeks. So maybe it's not fair to be overly critical of their pass blocking. But the run blocking is the part that I might be the most critical of, especially when you don't have Kavorian Barnes. So let's look at the PFF grades, because pass block, I'm going to go in order of their first 4 games, 78.5, 84, or excuse me, 70. I was reading the offense in total. 72.1, 72.3, 65.8, 62.4. So what you see is these last 2 weeks, they dropped out of the 60s, but they were still pass blocking, relatively decent at the beginning of the year. And that's what I'm saying. Maybe when they face more moderate defensive lines, you won't see 60s. You'll see 70s. But the run block, on the other hand, 64.1, 67.5, 62.3, 60.2. These are not good scores. The best score you get is 67.5 against Abilene Christian, FCS competition. That's the best performance that you get. So basically, they've never been able to run block that well. And when you don't have Kavorian Barnes, that's a huge issue. That's a huge issue when you don't have Kavorian Barnes in the lineup. And I like Trent Battle. I like Payne. I do. But I don't think that they're running backs that I necessarily feel like can overcome bad blocking often. And no running back's going to do it a lot. But I think that more physical running backs are better equipped for that at times, because it's just like, all right, maybe we need to get 2 yards in a cloud of dust. Maybe we just need to be in a scrum and we need to push forward. But when you have running backs that tend to open up in space or be best used in open space, you need them to get to space and shake a guy. But when they have to shake a guy and they have to shake a second guy right away, that's a little bit more difficult to ask. And that's their whole game. And I thought physicality was honestly the trademark of the TCU versus Arizona State matchup. That may sound crazy, especially coming from the TCU side, but I would say when they began to lose everything, lose all capabilities, it was the run game. Or excuse me, it was the pass rush. It was the run game on Arizona State's offense that was really hurting them at times. But early in the game, I had a list. I actually wrote down a list. Let's see if I can find it. I wrote down a list of physical moments from the TCU offense and kind of the defense too. Well, I passed it. Where is it at? I don't see it right now. So I just have to go off my own memory of it. But Yep. Nope. Don't see it. That's okay. Point is, Trent Battle, Payne, they like Battle and Payne had really good finishes to their runs. You look at Rogers, really good finish to a run. Thought Manjack ran tough. I thought that the defense they held up in the interior specifically. You see these moments where it's like, okay, you're getting good things, you're getting physical play. The problem is all of the physical moments that excelled for TCU were in the first half. That's when they were building up their 17-0 lead. Once the second half turned, once that real charge happened by Arizona State at the end of the first half, it felt like the physicality edge completely disappeared. There was no more we're setting the tone in the interiors. No more we're finishing off things strong. It was Arizona State is penetrating your offensive line. They're rocking your quarterback. They are bringing him down at will. I think they had 6 sacks. You ain't going to get any offense going if your quarterback is getting hit that much. And that does not all fall on Josh Hoover. It doesn't. It doesn't. But the offensive line has to be better because you're going to run into more teams that are physical. And if you're always going to get beat by 4-man lines, 3-man lines, that was getting crazy. Like you were getting beat by down linemen, no blitzes. And I know that's what Arizona State does. But if you're going to have other teams replicate it, you are going to have a tough time passing the football because if they can rush 4, drop 7, that means there's going to be a lot of lanes closed off. And if you're getting there quick with 4, you're not going to have the time to read through all of those defensive coverages. So this is an all-around issue for TCU. And along with turning over the ball in the red zone, it's 2 things that if they don't get covered up, if they don't get cleaned up, it's over. It's over. You're going to lose another game. And I told you yesterday, you need perfection. Perfection is not possible if you're turning over the ball in the red zone. It's not possible if your offensive line can't run block. It's not possible if your quarterback can't stay clean. And it's not possible if your quarterback is turning over the ball either and seeming a little bit rattled when the pressure is getting to him. You can't have a quarterback getting rattled when the pressure is getting to him if your offensive line is always allowing the pressure to get to him. That means your quarterback's always rattled. That means you're not going to get a good offense. That means you're not going to score points. And what did I tell you? The most revolutionary thing ever to tie it all the way together. Points matter. You need points. You need points. So, in the meantime, in between time, we'll be back tomorrow. Revenge is on the mind as they try to take down Deion Sanders in Colorado and get their get back from the 2023 matchup. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.